Evening, my beloved brethren from Hope. And
Good evening.
your name will always inspire you in 2024, whatever happens, whatever difficulties you go through. Hope. We are Hope Church. And precisely when we think about pawns in a cosmic war, how much we need hope. The Cold War lasted 45 years. Now, there were no direct military campaign between the two main antagonists, the United States and Russia, or the USSR, the Soviet Union. Yet billions of dollars and millions of lives were lost in that fight of the Cold War. Actually, it became the longest war in history, 45 years. It was called the Cold War because there were no visible weapons, no troops assailing beaches in Normandy as during World War II, no bombs being dropped on cities like they did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. No visible soldiers in uniforms rushing upon each other, shooting guns, stabbing each other with bayonets, fighting. It was a Cold War because it was kept out of sight. Keep that in mind. It was kept out of sight, but it was a war, nevertheless. So instead of uniformed soldiers, there were spies. There were secret weapons being built, surveillance equipment, submarines that could blow up a continent even, missiles, all hidden out of sight. But it was a war. Like I said, the Cold War was a war that had no bombs and guns, but it was a war of ideology. Keep that word in mind. It was a war of ideology between communism on the one hand and capitalism on the other, between the good old American way of life and the Russian way of life. It was a war, like I said. And the theater, check this out, the theater were not the beaches or the fields of Italy. The theater wasn't even on Pearl Harbor. The theater of this war was the mind of men. As America pushed her propaganda into her people to strengthen their hatred against communism and to try to get the message into communist territory that democracy is what you need. On the other hand, the communist countries, they also indoctrinated their people about communism and taught them to hate the West, to hate capitalism, and America especially, who was the most blatant proponent of a capitalistic lifestyle. And they too tried to turn others to embrace communism. So while America is trying to gain sympathies from the communist countries were trying to gain sympathies in the Western countries so that people will embrace communism. There were spies, like I said before, American spies in Russia and Russian spies in America, all of them trying to turn the tide and the citizens. Yes, we, the citizens, were going about our daily business, usually unaware of all that was happening in the background, not recognizing many times that there was a guy in the Kremlin and a guy in the White House who, at the touch of a button, could unleash missiles that had the power to destroy the earth many times over. The Cold War was a war of ideology, a war that was bigger than all the other scuffles in World War I and World War II. It was a battle for the minds of men and the loyalties of the people. A war that asked which kingdom would come out the winner, which philosophy would overthrow the other, who would win, capitalism or communism? And of course, today we recognize that democracy won the day. The Berlin Wall fell, the Iron Curtain melted, and now Russia is, quote unquote, a democracy. Ironically, America seems to be becoming more and more like the Russia of old as we move along. So like I said, the Cold War was a war for the mind of men and the loyalty of the people, a great ideological war. But may I suggest that the Cold War is a joke. It is pale in comparison with the war between the dragon and the prince, between Christ and Satan, between good and evil. You and I are pawns in this great war. Why do I say we are pawns? Because we are helpless to dictate its outcome. We have no power over who wins. We don't set the rules. And just like during the Cold War, you were either communist or you were a capitalist or living in a democracy. And you were there being manipulated by the American propaganda, the Russian propaganda, and all the idea is, which will you choose? Do you want to be a loyal communist or a loyal American? The propaganda that was done is a propaganda that is still being done. Heaven has its propaganda. And that propaganda is to gain the sympathies of men. But guess what? Hell has its propaganda. If the prince, Michael, has his word out there, trying to get the news out, he has his spies, his agents, he's sending his message into Satan's territory. Guess what? Satan, the enemy, is also sending his message into Christ's territory, into the church and all over, because both kingdoms are seeing who would win, who would gain the loyalty of men and women. And so, my brethren, as we explore Revelation 12 and 13 this weekend, it will be an effort to remove the curtain, so to speak, to explore the apocalypse, which incidentally means to pull aside the blind or the curtains, so that we might see and recognize the issues involved and get a glimpse of the powers behind it all. There will be an analysis of the report given in chapter 12, the expose that should bring some clarity and understanding. We will get a chance to meet the antagonist, to see them in action, and get to determine who is good and who is bad. But want to or not, we are pawns in this cosmic war. We can't control the outcome. We have no say in the rules of engagement. All that you and I could do, Hope Church, is to choose whose side we are on. Hopefully, the evidence presented tonight will allow us to take a side and to make that decision. Incidentally, during the 1950s, a certain Senator Joseph McCarthy was running for office, and he decided that the platform he would use would be to stamp out communism in America. And so his whole campaign was trying to detect who were communists, who were the tares among the wheat, so to speak, who were the wolves in sheep clothing in America. And many innocent people were accused of being communist. They were blacklisted. They lost their businesses, their jobs, their families. They were threatened with jail if that label of communist was put on them. The sad thing is, once that label was put on you, there was little hope of coming back. Because you see, just as in the Cold War, that the great weapons, right, were lies and propaganda, fear-mongering among the people. The fact is, if you get people scared enough, they will do anything to maintain safety. And in this cosmic war between good and evil, between Christ and the dragon, there is propaganda. Lies are being put out there. Lies are being told to get people scared, threaten their safety. We will see that in Revelation 13 tomorrow. And they will do anything to keep safe. Who is pushing the fear agenda? Which one of the antagonists is playing on our fears? Sit back and pay attention as we delve into the details of this cosmic war, and you will find out. Once again, I say we are pawns in this war. We don't get to call the shots. We don't make the rules. We don't determine who really rules and who wins. It's like the elections, Yes, we may vote, but we don't determine who sits in the White House. The Electoral College does that. All we can do is say, I like Biden. Or some of you might say, I like Trump. But even then, we cast our vote and we hope our man will win. But ultimately, it's the Electoral College that determines who sits in the White House. We are pawns even in this democracy because we have no power to determine who wins or how it comes to an end. All we can do is decide which team we want to be on and then hope our team wins. and also pray that our team wins. Well, I guess the good news is that for all of us in this cosmic war is that we already know who wins. Amen? In this great war, we already know who's going to win the White House, so to speak, who's going to sit on the throne of the universe. The question is, will we be loyal subjects? Can we remain loyal to our team through the ups and downs? It will be like someone growing up in a communist country and desiring to live in America, wanting democracy, and holding their breath as the government pushes its propaganda and as people start spying on each other. And they're hoping beyond hope that democracy wins out in the end. Well, we are in that spiritual communist America. Yes. And we are hoping that spiritual America wins. Because we are American at heart. We are spiritual Americans at heart, using American Russia to represent the two different powers. We want to get out of communist country because we want to get into the democratic spiritual America, so to speak. But guess what? My fellow pawns in this great spiritual Cold War, listen up. The other speakers have good news for you. And if you listen carefully, it just might help you to know which side to choose, how to choose your side, how to look forward and recognize the propaganda to hold on to truth. I say listen up carefully, because at the end of the day, you can't choose who wins. All you can choose is whose side you're going to be on and to be loyal to your team. Hooray for Team Jesus. I'm on his side. I hope you are as well in this great war. God bless you all richly.